Hello and welcome. You're watching Medically Speaking. I'm Meenakshi Upreti. With me, a very special guest, Anjali Kurtzi, Chairperson of the South African Medical Association. Thank you, ma'am, for taking our time to speak to NewsX. My very first question to you, ma'am. When we look at the Omicron trajectory in South Africa, certainly it's very promising. In India, the cases are peaking as of now, but South Africa, as soon as the new year happened, you'd removed restriction. You all said that the Omicron cases have peaked. What's been your experience so far?
Good afternoon from a sunny South Africa. Very good question. What we have noticed when we peaked is that although the cases were higher that were tested positive than with Delta, our hospital admissions and our death rate and our ICU were never been in any danger. So we right from the beginning we said that the majority of people will get mild disease, and that was, well, and still is the experience of the majority of people in South Africa. So if we then look at the latest data that we have, the 7-day moving average of new cases in South Africa currently is around about 5 per 100,000 people per day. And I'm quite sure our positivity rate last night was 10.6%. And I'm quite sure we are moving out of our fourth wave. And hopefully within the next 2 weeks, we will be less than 5%. And that is what you want in positivity rate.
Right. And ma'am, when we speak of, the South African experience vis-a-vis the Indian experience, and I ask you this specifically because in India also there are many states which have started removing restriction. Pan-India, the central government has not. We are yet to do that. Do you think that we have been seeing an increase in cases for the past few weeks? Do you think that about time in a few weeks from now on, do you see a similar trajectory for India as well?
Yes, I see. I can see a similar trajectory. Remember, and I've said this many times before, the virus doesn't look at borders. It doesn't care whether you are India, whether you're South Africa, who you are. That is the nature of the virus, and this is a fast-spreading virus, predominantly of mild symptoms for most of the people. It doesn't care that much whether you're vaccinated or not to give you a mild disease. You get your breakthrough infections on your mild disease. However, the virus, in terms of hospitalization and with ICU, we're not talking about normal hospitalizations here. We're talking about ICU and high care and death rate. The virus is not as successful in those cases, especially under the vaccinated people. So it's important to say, yes, we know even if you're vaccinated, you can still get infected if you're with mild disease. However, we know that your chances to end up in hospital for severe cases far less if you are vaccinated.
Right. And ma'am, could you elaborate, considering you say, of course, rightly said so, that those who are inoculated, their chances of landing in hospitals is much lower. What really has been the South African experience like? If you could share data with us when we speak of hospitalization and also the number of deaths, if I'm correct, much lower than the last variants we had seen this time around, isn't it?
Yeah. So if we look at South Africa stats, if we look at the reported cases, in wave 2, at the highest peak, it was 19,042. With wave 3, Delta, 19,900. With Omicron, 23,000. However, if we look at the death rate in South Africa, it was less than 1/3 of Delta. And hospitalizations, half of what was seen with Delta. So if you look at the hospital admissions, it was half. So, and if we look at that very, very steep upwards curve, peak and come down just as steeply, I call it the hit and run variant, because it really just go for it. It hits the patient and then it subsides. So I think that is very important to know that one third in South Africa ended up in hospital. However, something that I think we need to discuss and say that why we think we are going to see, or why do we want to see the end of the fourth wave, is because we have now looked at our previous data, and it's clear that between our waves, there's a type of 3 months period in between before the next one started. We have seen it now with with this 4 waves, and that is this cyclic type of pattern is much easier seen in your smaller countries than in your bigger countries.
Yes.
And in South Africa, it's definitely at this stage a cyclic phase.
Well, certainly, yes. So when we speak of the demographics, the countries may be different, but there are certainly lessons and a very reassuring message coming from your side. This is what a lot of, people here in India wanting to hear, that cases are peaking. Hopefully, they're going to steeply, just as we saw in Africa, go down as well. Ma'am, there was another study which had just come out by a small group of South African scientists. They believe that Omicron infection eventually is going to protect against the Delta variant. It's going to overtake the Delta variant, and that could take us from pandemic to an endemic. What is your view on that, ma'am?
So for now, definitely it overruled or outrun the Delta, definitely. So at primary healthcare, we look at the clinical picture. So in the clinical picture, we can say this is Delta, this is Omicron. Definitely the Omicron. However, casualty or ICU might be different. Because if you've got pneumonia, you've got pneumonia. There it would be great to have sequencing to know what cases are lying in ICU. Is it Delta or Omicron? Okay, so that we're still lacking that in South Africa. So, and I think the next 6 months, 3 to 6 months, would tell us whether we're going to move into an endemic state or if we're going to see again a 5th wave, as we have seen every 3 months in between with little cases, and then you get your spike. But if that is true, we will see a 5th wave. That will most probably then by May. So if we still find during May, June, July, and only get one later on, one can start to say maybe it's endemic. But for now, we're still a bit early. But it might.
It may be a bit early, ma'am, but that's really the hope. When we speak of hospitalization, you rightly said that demographics of every country, living environment, very different. It is a little difficult to compare the countries. But when we look at US, large number of hospitalization of children, that's not something which we have seen, I believe, in South Africa also, and not at all in India. Take us through when it comes to children. How has Omicron affected children in South Africa? What has been your experience like?
Thank you. Very good question. I actually this morning saw a 6-month-old baby with positive, who tested positive. I tested the baby and he's positive. But clinically, and this is what we have seen with the children, they will have a fever. And this is now a baby. He can't complain, but the mother brought him because of the fever. These children, as a rule that we have seen, the minority, really minority, will be admitted in the end of the day for COVID itself. There would be other comorbidities, a child who's got other diseases with. And if you do admit the child or the baby because of Omicron, we have seen that the hospital stay, a normal stay, if you're not in ICU, is about 4 to 5 days. So it's nothing like we have seen with the other variants.
Well, the experience has been similar as far as children in India are also concerned, ma'am. But from children to vaccination, South Africa has seen till now relatively low vaccination. There have been a lot of debate and discussion on booster shots. The World Health Organization has anyway been pitching for donation and perhaps ensuring that the world gets vaccinated first before boosters are given to population within the countries. In India also, that debate really is raging even as we speak. Primetime news channel, Indian news channel every day discuss the booster shot. What really is your take on the same, ma'am?
First of all, again, everyone first must get vaccinated, and you can simultaneously run your boosters for your high risk patients above the age of 50 plus. So in South Africa, we have only vaccinated, it's not compulsory, children between the age of 12 and 17. And we first started off with 1 dose, but they now are with Pfizer. That's the only one that we do give the children. And they can now have their second dose 42 days later after their first dosage. However, we have no intention at this stage to vaccinate smaller children under that age group. Under the age group of 12.
And not just children, ma'am, the overall population, if I'm correct, about 26 to 27% population is the one which is vaccinated. Take us through the type of immunity which the vaccination provides against the Omicron variant, because as far as infection is concerned, it's very easily able to break the shield of immunity which vaccines provide you. Yes, it does help you against hospitalization, seeing a more severe disease. But what really has been your experience like on that front?
Good question as well. So this is experience, and this is my life, real world experience, and I think my colleagues would be the same. So we started last year around about May with vaccines for our population in South Africa. So what we are seeing, if you have been vaccinated, let's say you come in today to me for a consultation and you're not sure whether you've got Omicron or upper respiratory tract infection. If you have been vaccinated, regardless whether it is Pfizer or Johnson & Johnson, with the final injection in September last year, you've got more than a 50% chance to test positive. However, if you've been vaccinated in November and the beginning of December, you don't have.
So it's also not just vaccination, also the time when one has been vaccinated, which has to be taken into consideration. Ma'am, before I let you go, just one or two more questions. Reports came in only yesterday, and the World Health Organization also a very reassuring message, like you're just telling us, not just South Africa, overall Africa, if we speak of, the Omicron cases have been falling down drastically. As you sign off, ma'am, one last question. Any message for India? Certainly a reassuring one, which you did give right at the beginning of the show.
So my assurance to India is the virus will hopefully follow the same trajectory it did in South Africa, because there's not an Indian variant and there's not a South African variant. It is the Omicron variant. And as long as you wear your masks, you get your vaccines, you should be protected against severe disease. Yes, you will get mild disease, but that means you will not end up in hospital or die.
Well, absolutely. A variant cannot be attributed to any country, and rightly said so, ma'am. Certainly a very, very reassuring message from you. Hopefully, in India also, we see Omicron following the same trajectory. Even as we speak, more and more states in India are, removing their curbs. Hopefully, we see Omicron peak in India, just like we have in Africa. For now, thank you, ma'am, for joining us with your views on that big story.
Thank you so much.
For more such videos, subscribe to the NewsX YouTube channel, hit the bell icon.